Hi, and thanks for joining us. On today's show, we've got Jaime Taets. She's been named to Inc. magazine's 200 top female founders list, a 100 women to know in America, and Twin Cities Business 2022 notable female entrepreneurs. Here's my conversation with Jaime. Jaime, thanks for so much for joining us here today. I guess you're in sunny Minneapolis. It's always sunny in Minneapolis, right?
Oh, I wish. This is not the time. It is sunny today, but this is not the time of year typically that it is.
I guess
It's the
it's
time of
coming,
year we
right?
wonder why we live here.
Yeah, in the I go back and forth from Ottawa, Canada, and Florida myself, and in the midst of winter, I tend to escape, and I oftentimes ask myself, why did we relocate? Now, in the midst of a beautiful summer, right, when I'm up on the lake, obviously
Right.
it's super wonderful, but that's the back and forth. Do you get away at all yourself? Do you guys get away at all?
We get away a lot. We do a lot of travel. At least one big international trip a year. We travel all over the country. We're always going to someplace new to find new places. So I'm a travel junkie. So I have already strategically have all of my trips planned to get me out of here during the winter to make it a little less severe.
Oh, that's very nice. So where do you have planned then?
So we'll be in San Diego. We're going to go to Denver because we still like the snow. We just like the sun a lot more.
Yes, for San Diego, love it. Am there regularly, obviously, and have good friends in Denver as well. The thing they say in Denver is, yes, sunshine. They like to obviously ski and snowboard, but they say they like to be able to get into the snow and then get out of the snow, which is what they were able to do from there, right?
Correct, right. And the sun makes a huge difference. So it's, yeah, I'm chasing the sun usually.
That's wonderful. That's great stuff. And so obviously that's one of the things that fills your soul. What else fills your soul, Jaime?
I love to hike, so that's why Denver is a really important thing for me. I like to be active, so we're a pretty active family. We live on a lake. I picked up wake surfing 3 years ago, so as a mom, I'm kind of cool again to my teenagers. So we like to try new things. I want to try kite surfing this next summer, like anything that I won't severely injure myself, I'm usually up for.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We're loving the wake surfing as well. I've done a lot of surfing, and I love how when we're behind the wake surf boat that I mean, it's a moving wave, right? That you're able to
Yeah.
stay on for much longer than a typical surf, which is obviously wonderful. So we talk about ways of filling our soul, the things we like to do, travel. Let's talk work, because you spend a lot of time making sure you're creating the right circumstances in work environments, right? How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, so we're really focused as a business on creating impact in the work environment where we get most excited. And so that's what we do as a company. We come in and help other companies understand their growth, what they need to do to grow, because everybody obviously wants to grow. But with growth, you also need leaders who can drive change and transformation, and you need a culture that can withstand, right, that growth and change and transformation. So we're helping kind of come in and look at all of that, which is very fulfilling because it's a much more a longer term view, right? Instead of just like, what do we need to do in Q4, right, to make our numbers. We're helping businesses take kind of that longer view, especially when it comes to people.
And when you say longer view, what time frame is that, or what's a longer view?
Well, right now in this business environment, it used to be some would go 7 to 10 years out, right? If we had manufacturing clients that were looking at capital investments and right, bigger facilities investments. But right now in this environment, most are at 3 to 5 years. Not that they don't have capital beyond that they're looking to allocate, but most businesses know that the rapid pace of change, we are just getting to a point where if you're too far out, it really doesn't matter because there's going to be so much that changes between now and then. So we're sticking in that 3 to 5 year that we think is the sweet spot right now.
Yeah, and I see that as well. And as you say that 3 to 5, you're talking growth. I have a lot of companies or a lot of clients that are looking to exit. Is that part of the conversation as well? Is it a 3 to 5 year exit? Is what you're oftentimes hearing?
Yes, three minimum, five, is 3 to 5 is where you want to be, but a minimum three if you are looking to exit. And I think it's such an important thing for business owners, right? For presidents that are gonna, sell the company, private equity, whatever it is you need to get it as healthy as possible to reduce risk for whoever's buying it, which is going to get you, right, a higher multiplier. And I think a lot of people now, especially when you look at the baby boomer population, we've got such a large population that is looking for what's next. And unfortunately, I hear a lot of stories from people who do what you do, right? From exit planning, that it's like, okay, I want to be done in end of 2024. And people are like, the business, it's built on you. It's not even ready, right, to sell because you're so ingrained in it. And so giving you that runway
Yeah, definitely having some runway is obviously very key for that. And when you talk of that 3 to 5 that exits, it's interesting to think as well how cultures have changed. We're talking the post-COVID, pandemic era. People don't seem to be, they don't have their nose to the grindstone the way perhaps they did previously. Have you noticed a shift? You hear people saying things differently, and maybe they don't want to do it the way they were before.
They don't, and we see that pretty regularly, and we've done a lot of interviews and a lot of media, about this. And it went from the quiet quitting, great resignation, quiet quitting, all these terms that we throw on it. It's not that it's new. Like, people were doing this before the pandemic, where there were in cultures where their leaders just weren't great and they didn't feel inspired by the work they were doing. So that's always been there. When we look at the numbers since 2009, we've been on this kind of decline of people leaving the workforce. What I think the pandemic did was forced everybody to reevaluate what was important to them. Right? When we got to go home and we got to really eliminate some of the stress, it produced different stress, but we got to eliminate some of the stress. We got to see our families more, which a lot of people that were traveling like me all the time didn't. And a lot of them went, I like this the way it is now, right? I like being around my family and seeing my kids before they grow up, right? And leave the house. And I think we're at that point where people, maybe they don't want to go to where we were, right, when the pandemic hit, but they also don't want to go back to the way it was before with the burnout and the 80 hours a week. And so they're trying to find that middle. And I think that's the tension that we're feeling between businesses and their employees right now, is that nobody knows where that line's at. And we're trying to figure out where we're both comfortable. And instead, we're both pulling in either direction. And eventually we'll figure that out. But I think it's hard right now for both employees and companies.
Yeah, that's so interesting, right? Where people want to be, or that I don't know if the sweet spot's the right way to say it. Certainly spending time. I mean, nobody on their deathbed says, "I wish I'd spend more time in the office." Right? I mean, that's the old cliche. It just seems to be more true, more now than ever. So, what are people saying? What do people really want? Do you think?
They want to do something that has purpose. We're hearing the purpose word, and we're hearing it from HR leaders, people that are coming in to hire, right? That they're hiring for their companies, that are coming in to interview. They're asking about the purpose of the company at a level we've never seen before. So even when you look at the younger generations, we talk about it being the soul of the company is what they're actually asking about. Not about, revenue and growth. That's great. That creates opportunities for growth for individuals. But they really want to know about, like, how are you building a conscious business, right? That supports the employees, that supports your shareholders, or whatever, your ownership, that supports the community. And so they're looking at a more holistic view. And we're seeing that at all ages. So even the boomers, right, the late stage, they're starting to see they want to be somewhere where there's more significance, and they feel like they're doing something bigger than just clocking in and clocking out and doing the work. And so companies are having to dig deep. I mean, we have manufacturing companies, construction companies that are like, our job was to just grow, right, and build stuff. And now they're starting to really look at it and say, what is our purpose as a company? Because they know they have to have that in order to attract the top talent in the future.
So I hear that, and I'm hearing it more from clients. I'm seeing it in businesses, and frankly, it makes businesses more compelling. But how do you find purpose? What do you do to find purpose?
So depending on the industry and the type of work that you do, it tends to be harder. We think it should be easier across the board, but when you have a leadership team, for example, right, you've got an executive team that has come from all different walks of life and has come from different companies and different backgrounds, and they're coming together in a company to say, what is our purpose? Sometimes the work is hard to bring them all together because they're all there for a different reason. You have somebody who's competitive, who's there to win, right? We want to beat the competition. We want to be the best in the industry. You have somebody who maybe is a little more focused on, I want to make sure we leave a legacy and there's something important when we're not here anymore, or community focused. And so the hardest part for us is bringing those executives together to say we need a common purpose. It's typically easier when you have a founder, an owner still involved in the business, because the purpose tends to come from why they started the business in the first place, right? What did they want to do? Who did they want to serve? So sometimes we can lean on that, but when it's a company been hired into the company that are leading the company, it takes some time. We have a full framework that we take them through that isn't just like, let's talk about purpose. It's let's talk about who we are, how we win, all these different aspects of strategy that then give us, but what drives us every day to get out of bed. The analogy is, if we had a really crappy day yesterday, we had a customer issue or a project go off, what gets us out of bed the next day? And that's what we're trying to kind of dig with leaders is get them to that point, because it's good for their own energy and the energy of the organization.
Yeah. So, Jimmy, you launched Keystone Group in 2013. So maybe employing what you just described there. Why did you create it? What was your purpose?
So fully transparent, my purpose was, I had a long road in corporate, and I made my experience, and I went to work for a company that I just didn't respect. I didn't realize it at the time. I went to work for a leader, and about 18 months in, I just realized this wasn't a company I wanted to be associated with. I didn't have leaders that I looked up to at all. And so it was kind of the kick in the pants that I needed to say, maybe there's something different. And, 2013, there wasn't this huge rash of gig, right, economy and all of this stuff they're talking about now. It was still kind of a foreign concept to go from corporate and to go into entrepreneurship. And a lot of people thought I was crazy. But really, my guiding principle was, I want to work with people that I want to work with, and I want to serve people that really have shared values in our client base. And at that point, I also developed our no assholes rule, which meant we weren't going to bring anybody into the team, and we weren't going to work with clients that were that way, because it just isn't as much fun. If I'm going to take all the risk of being an entrepreneur, I'm sure as heck going to do it with people I want to do it with. And so that was kind of my founding principle. And we've been pretty successful. We've made some mistakes here and there, right? And we very quickly learned that our no assholes policy was being we were breaking it, and so we had to make some changes. But it's been kind of just a slow, steady growth from there, because we're making the right decisions about the people we work with.
That's that's so key as well. I mean, like attracts like. So if you're working with people that are assholes, and you're going to see more and more of those types of people. Whereas if you're working with good people, you attract good people, and it sort of it sort of evolves or continues from there. So using that 5-year time frame, where are you? Where's your business in 5 years?
Oh, it's a great question. In 10,000 leaders in the next 5 years, which is a really lofty goal. And why I say impacting leaders is that we've had a huge impact, but we believe that leadership and getting leaders healthy and leading better is actually where the growth of companies is going to come from, as we look at the transition that we're in.
And how, or what do we do? What do we do to make healthy leaders, or to get leaders healthy?
Yeah, we have to train them, and we have to give them the space, right, to kind of exercise new muscles. So we talk a lot about the conscious leadership, which is kind of where leadership is moving, less of the command and control, right, driving to results. Yes, results are needed, but more of the how you get to the result. In that conscious leadership, which is more around love, care, and respect for your people, which ultimately gets the highest performance out of them. We talk a lot. I do a lot of keynoting, and I share some stats that just, when we look at the labor numbers for 2030, we've got an 85 million person gap globally in the number of unfilled positions, that we just won't have humans that want to do it, or humans on the planet, period, because of the numbers game that we're in with the boomers and the next generations. And so when you think about that, what we have to do is maximize the people we already have on our team. And the only way to do that is with really good leadership. Because if I show up every day and I have a leader that sees more in me than I see in myself, I'm going to continue to rise to the challenge. But leaders don't innately have that skill, and we've got to prepare them for it. And then we've got to give them time to do it, and really value that leadership aspect versus just the getting stuff done, which is what many companies have been running on. So it's a big shift, but we have a lot of case studies and a lot of success that we can share. And so we're seeing the momentum for companies that are seeing that their future really resides in the level of their leadership.
And as you described, I mean, leadership's a skill as well, right? And making use of all the tools that might be available to a leader, to a company, to anybody trying to accomplish anything. How much, or are you looking at AI these days? What's your take on AI?
So I would not say I'm an expert, right? We pay attention to it because it's a huge theme, right? That's coming up with a lot of our clients. We are looking at AI more from the upskilling and reskilling of humans, right? So we've been talking to our clients for almost 10 years about automation. When you think about construction and manufacturing and in some of the industries that we work in, we've been talking to them about automation. And I remember the days when automation was the unions were up in our right, we're going to lose jobs and you're not going to, in what they're not looking at is the fact we don't have enough people to do these things. So I think AI is kind of the next iteration of the automation, right? Of 8 to 10 years ago, is AI is going to replace the meaning, like the tasks that are just like admin type tasks, right? APAR and some of those things that we can then take that person and have them spend time financially forecasting, right? And helping to understand big business decisions that we're trying to make instead of doing AP and AR. And so we can upskill those people. So I look at AI and I mean, it needs obviously some control, but I see it as very optimistic because I see the numbers, right? And what we're going to deal with down the road. And I think we have to get a grasp on it now because we can't wait until 2030 when we have this gap to be able to do it. So I see it as exciting as long as it's controlled, right? And we know how to use it appropriately.
Right. And so that's all being thought through right now. And all the emergence of new technology. Do you know much about blockchain? Do you know much about, the crypto or any of these other things that are evolving as well?
I'm not. That is actually an area we were just talking as a team because we're trying to kind of get me up and out. And these are the types of trends and things that I need to be educated on because they are going to impact our clients. And we always kind of want to be at the front of, what's around the next corner that we can help them see. So I'm not, but it's definitely, if you have any resources for me, it's something that's on my list for my own development and growth to really understand some of these bigger trends.
By all means, it is very important. This podcast being one, it's we try to speak with people there, and it's often just anecdotal, but we have people on, and it's been interesting that I'd say, as I asked that question I just asked you, I'd say 80% are participating in some shape or form or another. They say the population at large, it's 10%. So it's interesting that people are doing this and doing the type of things that we're doing right now are much more involved. I think when you talk about that forward thinking, I think a lot of leaders or people that are doing forward thinking, realizing it's here to stay as well. These are things that we need to make sure that we understand and harness for the future. You've done extensive writing as well, and on some of the things that we discussed here today. What are the topics that have inspired you, and why have you written on them?
Yeah, so my first book was released in 2021. That was a bit more personal development, but it's really turned into a leadership book at this point, just about those points of kind of stuck where there's just a lot of people right now that feel stuck. And there's a million different reasons for it. But I wrote the book to just like tips, tools, my own personal stories about like when you're at that point, instead of looking at a stuck point as an organization, as a leader in your personal life, what if you looked at it as it was preparing you for something else? Right? Like I need to build this muscle in order to get to the next thing. And when we talk about that with our clients, it changes their energy a bit. So I think that piece is more kind of on the energy side. And then in June of this year, 2023, I released a book on culture, which really talks about our model, because there's not a book out there that actually has a model in it. It's most of it's theoretical. And so we wanted to kind of share with the masses what we do, given that we're a boutique firm, right? We're not going to help everybody and kind of make it a self-help type of thing. So that's been wildly successful. And we're seeing, just a lot of amazing stories of companies that are driving different conversations than they would have. And so that's the most important thing for us. It's the impact of, how are we being a part of a ripple effect of conversations around culture and who we are and our purpose, and whether they ever hire us, it doesn't matter to us. It's that those kind of conversations are happening because we know that that's what's going to change the work environment and be able to achieve results in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jamie, you mentioned energy, throughout this conversation, you've been mentioning energy. What's your philosophy on that? Or when you speak to that, what are you speaking of?
I personally speak about everyone being the CEO, right, of their own life, their chief energy officer. and what are you doing? And it's different for everyone, right? There's a lot of different ways. You're seeing a huge uptick, especially in the executive ranks, with meditation, and just different ways to kind of deal with stress, essentially, as people are creating more techniques, journaling and gratitude and meditation, in addition to exercise and everything else. But when I talk to executives, I'm actually, I've got, in 2024, we're starting an executive summit that's for CEOs. And it was because I want to have these types of conversations, not about business, but about how are you the best version of you so that you can help drive the business. Because if we don't start with you, the business can only grow, right, as fast as you can run with it. And if it's outgrowing you, that's a big concern. And there's most leaders at the top of an organization do not invest in themselves. They invest in their teams and they bring in leadership development and all of this, but they don't invest in the coaching and their own, kind of personal development. And so we're just seeing a huge gap. And it's something that we're kind of moving to start to close because we want to drive different conversations.
And is that what people do, or a leader does to, or I guess maybe I'll ask that question differently. What do you do to bring out the best version of yourself or the best version of others? How do you assist others bring out the best version of themselves?
Yeah. So we talk a lot about, leader as coach. And so, right, you need those people in your life, right? You think back to, your high school years, or maybe a great coach or a teacher, if you were, in theater or academics, somebody that made an impact on your life, right? You need to make sure you continuously have those people, because those are the people that do two things. They invest in you, meaning their time, their wisdom, and they challenge you. So even a CEO needs someone in their life that's saying, I think you can be better. I think there's more growth, right, that you can have. And then once a CEO and executives understand how that's done for them, it teaches them how to do it for other people. So there's a really alarming stat that I share when I talk to CEOs, and they're appalled by it. But studies will prove that our employee base gives us about 40% of what they're capable of in terms of their performance. And so when you share that with executives, they're like, oh, like that's appalling. Their brain immediately goes to they're lazy, and it must be because they're working remote, or right. But it's not that. It's because they don't know they're capable of more, because no one's ever said, hey, I'm going to give you this chance on this project, right? I want you to lead this or do something you haven't done before. No one's challenged them to learn these new skills or do something different. And so they don't know they have another 60% to give. And so that's what we're trying to help leaders do, is both for themselves, where is that additional give that you've got, and for their people, because that's what's going to be the competitive advantage of the future when there's not as many people, right, in the workforce. And when we're going to have to run companies really lean because of global risk and everything else we're talking about, supply chain. And how we do that is we kind of get the performance of the people we already have.
Make
right?
more from less, right? Or more
Right. We make more from less.
have.
We run lean, but we run fast and lean.
Absolutely. No, Jaime, great stuff. If someone's interested in learning more or working with you, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, so LinkedIn, Jaime Taets would welcome conversations with anyone if there's something we can do to help or just have a conversation. Also website, so Keystone Group INTL, short for international, KeystoneGroupINTL.com, talks a lot about the books and all of our services and kind of how we work with companies. So again, always willing to have a conversation. Also always willing to have these types of conversations, whether it's on podcasts or it's, at conferences. So that's another thing that really helps us create a bigger impact, is by being able to share this. So I appreciate you having this conversation and bringing this to your listeners.
Well, we appreciate having you on. Thanks so much for joining us here today. We like to end these shows with one thing that's touched you. We've talked a lot today about energy and making the best of yourself and others. Is there one person that said something to you, or somebody you've worked with that's had a deep impact on you, that you might be able to pass along here today to anybody listening?
Yeah. So somebody that's impacting me right now, again, I think over my life, there's been lots and lots of people, but right now it's my 18-year-old daughter. And most people look to people that are older than them and more successful than them. And right, those are the people that are impacting them. And sometimes people right in your life around you day in and day out are not the ones that we look at. But I look at her, I look at what she's overcome, just how she looks at the world is just so refreshing. And I think a lot of us, we diminish the younger generations because we think they're so different than us. But I think this Gen Z generation, different than the millennials, has something to show us. they really have something that we can learn from if we're willing to listen to them and to see the world from their perspective. And so right now I'm gaining a lot of inspiration from that generation.
That's wonderful. That's so good. I'm getting a lot of inspiration from this conversation. So thanks so much for joining us here, and I look forward to next time on the Millionaire's Lawyer.